Hey YouTube, it's Insko here and welcome back to another video. And today I'm going to be showing you how I made my newest song, We're Just People. Now I'm sorry for not uploading on a Monday, this came out on a Wednesday and that's because my song actually came out yesterday. And obviously if you haven't checked it out yet, all the links are in the description for that. Definitely go check it out before you watch this video. Also, I'm sorry if my microphone audio sounds a little bit off. But anyway, let's get into the video.
We were falling like stars.
So like all of my other breakdown videos of how I made my songs, I'm going to be splitting this video into a couple of different sections. We're going to have the verse, the build up, the drop, and then kind of just random from there because it gets a bit repetitive. So unlike all of my other songs, the verse actually starts straight away. We don't have a little intro or anything, it just has a reverse bit and it comes in. So with that being said, I guess the first thing I should show you is the vocals. This is what the vocals sound like by themselves.
You say you're tired, and I say, darling, it's alright. The sun will come out before we're old, we'll get it right.
So in the first part of the first verse, there's literally just the vocals. There's one that pans to the left ear and one that pans to the right ear. I always do that. And there's also this really nice pitched vocal that's just drowned in reverb that kind of repeats the main vocal. And then the only thing that really changes in the second half of the first verse is I add this deep vocal to layer it. So that's everything that's going on with the vocals in the verse. Let's look at the piano. Now for the piano, I used this free plugin called Labs. I used a preset called Soft Piano, and then I'd done some volume automation like this to kind of make it sound like a real piano. And obviously that wasn't all I did. I also done things like slightly moving notes and changing the velocities of it to make it sound as real as I could. But this is what the piano in the verse sounds like by itself, and this repeats the whole way through the verse. The only thing that's different with the piano is that as the verse progresses on, I decided to add more notes to the piano. The next thing we have is this pad. It's a really nice background thing and it goes throughout the whole verse. Sounds really quiet and muffled in the first half of the verse, but as the verse progresses on, it opens up a bit more and becomes louder. Next up, we have the sub bass, and this is what the sub bass sounds like in the first half of the verse. It's not very loud because obviously the intro is pretty empty and I didn't want it to be really loud and in your face. It actually gets louder during the rest of the verse. And I also layered it with a respace as well. Another thing I added in the second half of the verse was this weird ambient drone sound, and this is what that sounds like. Next up on the second half of the verse, we have the snaps. Now, these strings are all from Contact, but I've done it all separately instead of using the preset that has them like all in one. So what you're about to hear is 2 violins, a cello, and a viola all in one. I was really happy with how that came out. I also used automation to kind of make it fade up like that, just because that's how strings are played. But that is pretty much the verse, so let's head over to the build-up.
Sometimes it's hard, sometimes we get it wrong.
Okay, so if we take a look at the vocals on the build-up, a few things have changed. We now have this automated reverb, so that when there's empty gaps, there's actually a lot more reverb to fill it up.
People, we're just people.
And then also added this vocal harmony layer. Which sounds like this.
Just people.
And then finally, this is the funny one. I added my own vocals to layer this last little bit, and this is what that sounds like.
Sometimes it's hard, sometimes we get it wrong.
But altogether, they sound pretty nice, and I'm really happy with them. Even though you can't really hear my vocals, and even though they're very auto-tuned, it works really well. It filled everything up, and I was really happy with it.
Sometimes it's hard, sometimes we get it wrong. We're just
Next up, we have the claps, which are just continuous throughout the whole build-up. Then we have this really nice build-up snare roll sound that I got from a sample pack. Then we have this other drum roll build-up sample. Then we have the piano, but the one with the not high notes, so the bit that I used at the start. And I'm not going to show you that, actually, you already know what that sounds like. Then we have this clock ticking sound. Then we have the pads from the verse that just continue on. The strings from the verse that just continue on. Then we have the bass that I am going to show you because I actually made the re-space a lot more strong and loud. Then I decided to introduce the vocal chops from the drop as things start to get a little bit more quicker, a little bit more intense, just because that way it kind of gives you a bit of a teaser of what's to come. Then I've done the same thing but with the chords from the drop. And that is the build-up, so let's get into the drop. So the first thing that you will probably want to see is the vocal chops because they're the most interesting thing and it's the thing that everybody likes the most in my songs. So this is what the vocal chops sound like by themselves. And this was actually really interesting and fun for me to do because I normally either pitch the vocals up or keep them at the same octave as the original vocals. But what I decided to do with this one was do both. I was like, you know what? I have this plugin called Little Alter Boy, which I use to pitch up the vocals. Why don't I just automate that so that I can turn it on and off and then do both? So I did that. And that's this automation here that you can see. Whenever it's up, it means that the vocal's being pitched up. And whether it's down, it means the vocal ain't being affected. And as for the pattern of the vocal chops, well, I just kind of go through, pick out sounds I like and just make it. So next up, we have the second best thing, the chords. This is what the chords sound like by themselves. So as you probably heard in the vocal as well, when it first comes in, it's filtered out and it's by using this automation here. I've literally just put a parametric EQ on both of them, linked them to the same automation channel and made it so that they kind of are muffled and then come out. This automation right here is the reverb for the chords. I didn't want to drown it in reverb like I did with the vocals, but I did want to kind of give it some reverb in those empty gaps so it didn't feel so empty in the whole song. This right here is the rate of the LFO tool that I'm using on the vocal bus. This is the rate that the chords kind of dip, and as you can see, this section here is when it gets slightly quicker. All of this is side chaining at 1-2, whereas here it's side chaining at 1-4. Just decided to make it go a little bit quicker because it adds a bit of variety and it sounded quite nice. Then finally, these automations right here are pitch. They're little pitch bends that I decided to do when it changed chords. I haven't done it on every chord, as you can see, but it's quite a nice little feature and it adds change to it. Because this section here, without the pitch automation, sounds like this. But with the pitch automation, it sounds like this. It's just a nice little touch, you know. And these sections here are just reverse reverb taken from the next chord. So it kind of just like introduces it, kind of brings it in. It's quite nice. Next up, we have our basses. This is what the bass sounds like. Now, as you can see, I muted the first part of the bass because I felt like if I had that muffle effect and then it all hit, it will sound so much more sick, and it did. So I'm really happy I did that. But yeah, the bass is literally just a sub bass and a re-space, and the sub bass is just sounding really fat and the re-space is the re-space. Next up, we have the drums. I'm going to play them all together and then go through them in a little bit more detail after. As you can hear, the first kick is muffled, and it's to go with that muffled effect that I was going for. And then the first snare that actually played was 2 snares layered together, but then after that it's 3 snares layered. Then the kicks, we have a big fat punchy kick and then an acoustic kick. These right here are rides which kind of helped keep the rhythm of the song. This is a loop that I use in all of my songs, and it's from Sticks, and this is what that sounds like. And then we have my favorite little Sticks fill that sounds really nice. And then we have this Sticks hi-hat loop, which sounds like this. And all of that together is the first drop, so let's get into the second verse. Now, nothing major really changes in the second verse, other than that I added a few little things. So it starts off, same styled vocal as before, nothing really changing in the way of how it sounds there. The same piano patterns play as before, where it has less notes and more notes. However, this time I decided to add this little background vocal chop. I really like doing that. It was something a little bit random. It's really quiet in the beginning, then it gets louder, but it's just a nice little background thing. Then after a little while, then the pad comes in. I decided to do that just so it's kind of a little bit more empty, and then things started to come in. Then we have the same bass that was there before. We have that same drone sound. Then on the second half of the verse, I decided to add in this cello pluck sound that follows the root note of the chords. And then I also decided to add this guitar. Now, this guitar for once isn't recorded by my friend Jacob. It's all made in a plugin. But as you can see by the automation and the amount of effort I went through, I tried to make this guitar sound as real as I could. Even though it's just an audio file, I did actually do this in a separate project, and I made it so that each note were at like different velocities and slightly different timing. So I did really try and make it as real as I could. I also added these little reverse bits here, which sound nice, but I'm going to play all this together and then I'm going to show you it in a little bit more detail. Now, if I go onto the mixer channel and I just turn off all the effects so that you can hear it properly, this is what the loop sounds like by itself. Doesn't really sound that realistic. It sounds like an acoustic guitar, but it doesn't sound like somebody's actually playing it. So that's where I decided to play around with the different volumes and stuff like that in this automation. Then, the bit that I thought was actually genius of me, I decided to record that like scratch sound that you get when you're playing an acoustic guitar and you change between notes. If you don't know, I own an acoustic guitar. I just don't know how to play it. So what I did was I decided to bring it over here, sit here and just like scratch between notes. Well, I say between notes, just kind of up and down because I don't know how to play any notes. And what I did was I sampled that and I used it in between each section and I added them in and they sound quite nice. And finally, I'd done this little vocal thing before the second build up, and that's what this sounds like. It plays the last 2 notes of the guitar, and I thought that layered with the guitar would sound really nice, and it did. Like, if I play the guitar and that, you'll see what I mean. But yeah, that's the second verse. Not a lot really changed, but let's get into the second build-up. So nothing's really changed with the second build-up vocals. Other than that, I added a vocoder layer. If you don't know, I do this in basically all my songs, and this is what that sounds like by itself.
We're just people. We're just people. Sometimes it's hard, sometimes we get it wrong.
I also decided to take away the first couple of claps just to make it sound more empty and just have a nice introduction to the build-up. But other than that, everything else in the second build-up is the exact same as the first one, so let's get into the second drop. So instead of it being muffled, then a snare hits, and then it all comes in, I decided to have it muffled, have this little tom fill, and then everything comes in. This is what that little tom fill sounds like by itself. Now, a little bit has changed with the drums. Instead of the hi-hats and the clap loop coming in a little bit later, they came in after the first snare. Then on the second half of the drop, I decided to do one slight little change with the vocal chops. And that is, instead of it sounding like this, it goes like this. And that is because this drop is actually double the length of the first drop, and I kind of wanted to make it a little bit interesting, make it not so repetitive, so I had to have that little change to kind of introduce the second half. Then the other thing I added was this vocal layer. This one is actually me. Again, I done another like ad-libby vocal type thing, but this is what that sounds like by itself, and it plays in the background of the second half of the second drop. And then finally we have the last vocals, which literally just say what it's saying in the build up, but just right at the end of the last drop. As you can hear, a lot of effects on there, a lot of distortion, there's layering and pitching and everything, but that's what they all sound like together, and I'm really happy with how it came out. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is my song, We're Just People. Really, really happy with how it turned out. It's my first song of 2020. I'm going to be releasing a lot of new music this year. I've been working really hard on this 5-track EP. This is going to be one of the tracks from my 5-track EP, so it's a nice little teaser for you all. Like I said at the beginning of the video, if you haven't checked out the song already, links are in the description to do that. Also, I'm really trying to get to 1K on one of my songs this year. It's kind of like a goal of mine. But whether you have Apple Music, Spotify, YouTube, Soundcloud, anything, my music can be found on there. But if you do enjoy this song, please add it to your playlist, share it with your friends, and give my account a follow. I'm really trying to make this year the best I can make it, and I really am giving my music my absolute all. But anyway, thank you so much for watching this video. If you did enjoy, remember to hit that like button and subscribe for more videos, normally on a Monday. Thank you for watching, and have a good rest of your day.